Welcome to the Bob Priest Show of Life podcast. I'm your host, Bob Priest. Thanks for tuning in today's show. This podcast is dedicated to individuals and professionals who desire to learn more about the subject of health and wellness, as well as alternative technologies to better health and vitality. Let's get started. Welcome to today's show. I'm Bob Priest, your host. Today, my guest is Dr. Scott Bertrand. Hi, Doc. How you doing today?
I'm blessed, Bob. How are you doing this morning?
I'm blessed as
It's
well.
Bertrand. Okay.
Bertrand. I'm sorry. I hate
No worries.
people's names. I met Scott through a website. Everyone that listens to my podcast knows that I look for different ways of holistically helping our body heal itself. And I ran across Dr. Scott's information and I just became intrigued. And so I invited him on our podcast today. And first of all, Scott, let's learn a little bit about you. I mean, where are you from, your degrees, etc. And then we'll get into a little bit of your story.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. And again, it's a pleasure being here with your listeners. I'm from Ohio, but I now live in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been here a good 40 some years. I ended up here in Atlanta because I became a chiropractor at Life Chiropractic College right here in town. And I elected to stay here and have my practice. I'm now retired from my practice. I practiced for about 35 years in College Park, Georgia, and had a very successful and very pleasant practice. I enjoyed it thoroughly. But I had this mission that I felt I had to share. And so about 7-8 years ago, I took a patent of mine and decided to pursue that into that spinal cord injury space. And Bob, I've enjoyed that extremely well over the last 7 years. And we're finally now at a point where we're impacting a lot of lives. And that was the reward that I expected at the beginning, and it's coming true. And I appreciate the opportunity to educate some of the people in your listening group that we may be able to help some of them as well.
That's awesome. And it's often these types of aha moments, I call them, or when inventions come to mind, is through our own personal experiences. Did you have something happen with you that kind of got you to thinking about what I need to do to help not only myself, but maybe others?
Yep, without question, Bob, that is how it started with me. I was a young man, 19, 20, 21 years old, when I injured my low back in a skydiving injury. And it was, I had some fractures in the lumbar spine and it created some neurodeficits. And I was a young, healthy man, and I was looking forward to recovering from the trauma. I went into rehabilitation, couldn't be more excited to try and get this underway. And I realized how painful, and I'm sure many of the listeners experienced that, how painful that therapy really was. And in my mind at that time, I had to go, what in the world would you ever do in a rehab scenario that should be so painful? Because I knew the difference, being a previous athlete, between, muscle soreness. I know those kind of pains, but I also know the pain that says, whoa, you shouldn't be messing with this right now. And I realized in this particular therapy that that's kind of what they were putting me in. And now looking back, they were wrong and they were pushing it a little too early. But it caused an enormous amount of pain. And so what I did, Bob, is I just quit therapy. But I remember looking over at that therapist when he stamped my chart that said non-compliant patient. And I was not a non-compliant. I was the farthest thing from a non-compliant patient. So I was frustrated and upset. And that was the original injury that kind of sparked my interest in the spine. I mean, that what's drew me into the healthcare field, that understanding of the spine drew me to become a chiropractor. And to share, again, I think God gave me this mission, but I think he beat me up a few times just to make sure I was paying attention. Because in chiropractic school, at my brother's wedding, no less, I jumped off a high dive and broke my neck in the pool. And so again, I recovered. but I was thrown into that space again a decade or so later, and realized it hadn't changed. They were asking me to do the exact same things, and the therapist the first time looked across the table at me and said, Scott, you need to suck it up. And I'm thinking, it wasn't a suck it up thing. And then I go to the second therapist 10 years later, and maybe it's just coincidental. He looks across the table at me when I start complaining, and he says, suck it up. I said, this isn't a suck it up thing. You guys are doing it wrong.
That's crazy.
Years and years trying to figure out what needs to be done better. And by golly, I think we have it. And now we have a lot of those all-core 360s out there on the planet. But it's taken me a couple decades, Bob, and I feel bad that I couldn't make it happen sooner, but I'm doing the best I can.
Well, you're only one man, and a lot of inventors that I've run across, they have a lot of similar challenges. It's just getting the word out to the multitudes of people, even in this world that we live in of social media and all that. There's a lot of hype that's put out there, but the things that really count, things that people really need to pay attention to, sometimes get overlooked because we just don't stop long enough and actually listen. We're so attuned to little snippets of information, little sound bites. And
Right.
I've learned through my own injuries with stroke that there's a point you need to stop and you need to listen and you need to understand your body is wonderfully made, and it's made to heal itself if it has the right tools. And if we just throw stuff at it that's going to mask the injury and not actually help fix that injury, let our body do its work, but help it along the way, then we're missing out on some great opportunities in our life. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh my gosh, I feel like you took that right out of my mouth. God gave us this miracle machine to drive, and most of us spend our whole lives figuring out a way to kill it, and we're very successful at it. We do all kinds of horrible things to this beautiful, miraculous machine. But like you said, it was designed to heal. It was, and that's the whole point that this all-core 360 came from, because what the human body really is the greatest survival machine that's ever been on this planet. And it has been, and if you understand how the body survives, the best physicians help the body and what the body's doing on its own. That we should not even think that we can step in there and be wiser, smarter, greater, this incredible innate intelligence that's been healing us since the beginning of time. What we need to realize is, how is the body doing that? And how can I make that body do it a little better? And that's kind of where the all-core sprung from. How does the body survive? What are the mechanisms that the body needs to survive? And how do we improve that? And that actually causes some neuro rewiring. And that's what we're seeing in the all-core. But you're right. That's exactly right. We were given a gift, an amazing gift. It doesn't need to be masked. I mean, when we hurt, we need to stop and see what's hurting, not take an aspirin. There's a reason.
I don't want to hide the hurt. I want to figure out why I'm hurting. And a lot of times medication hides it and just masks the pain, and you don't really get to the root issue. So, I'm a big believer in chiropractics. I have one here locally that I go to. And in fact, one of my students from my early days as a teacher is the owner of the chiropractic group called Tuck Chiropractics. And I firm believer in what those folks do over there. As a chiropractor in your practice, and I know you've retired from that and you're working with your inventions, but what was one of the biggest accomplishments that you felt you had during your chiropractic years?
Well, that's an interesting question, Bob. Going to chiropractic school, you're taught how we can impact the body. Now, I had a medical background, and chiropractic kind of comes a little bit away from that medical background. So I was looking at the claims that, they were saying that chiropractic could do. I was fully understanding how it can help biomechanically, and in biomechanical assistance, it can fully make sense why it would release any tension or swelling around the nerve roots, which so many things for the body and all those things. But when I heard that, chiropractic care is going to make that migraine go away, and chiropractic care is going to make that that irritable bowel syndrome subside, and chiropractic care is going to help asthma. Those were the kind of things that even me in the middle of school, reading and listening to what was going on, I found maybe hard to embrace. But I didn't have the experience. But when I went out into the field and actually started treating patients and saw their migraines and asthma and these children go away, and all these things that people suffered with so long and had medicated themselves for so long, actually improve with just the manipulation of the spine. Early, it turned my profession into a passion. It was no longer just a career. It's how can I get my hands on that next person because I can help them. And that created a really nice practice. So I would say those were the times when those out of the normal kind of things occurred. I know I can make your back feel better, but it's the other things that were impressive.
That's really neat that you bring that up. My doctor, Dr. Mathis, was telling me a story. Actually, he was on my podcast several weeks ago, but he was telling me a story that he had a lady that couldn't get pregnant, and she was frustrated, and she had gone through everything that you can do to get pregnant. And she was telling him about it, and he said, well, let's just take care of what your immediate needs are, and we'll just keep discussing it. And he did his thing and his magic hands, I call them. And
Right.
the next time she came back in, after several times with him, she came back in and she had a big grin on her face and she was pregnant. And she said, I believe it's because of what you did to help me feel better. I guess it took the stress out, it relaxed her. Some of those manipulations that maybe was causing inflammation and things in her body. But he told me some pretty unique stories of things that happened in people's body that had, you would think, nothing to do with what you as a chiropractor are all about. But in essence, when you get the body doing what it's made to do, and then it's allowed to do what it does, it's a miracle. And so we are wonderfully and miraculously made by our own inventor, right?
Absolutely. We've been, like I said, we were created as a miracle. And I wish we would treat it better. So many things we take for granted. We just take so much for granted. And sometimes I think it's, we can see, well, so can a dog, well, seeing's nothing. Seeing is an incredible thing. So we just never really take I wish people really did pay attention to their machine, because I don't think they would trash it like they do now. So
we take better care of our cars than we do our bodies.
But, oh gosh, right.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. And now I have watched the videos. I've listened to some things about your invention, the All-Core 360. Let's talk about that, Scott, because it's fascinating what it does, and I know you're passionate about it. So let's hear about it.
Well, it's I appreciate the opportunity. The All-Core 360 is unique in so many ways. So, listeners kind of go into it with an open mind at the beginning, and then it'll make sense more at the end. So, we're all familiar with what a plank is, what an exercise a plank is. A plank is, unfortunately, in my belief, a plank is dependent on the shoulders and dependent on the arms and dependent on the hands and dependent on the feet to get into the proper position to challenge the core the way it does. So is Pilates and planks a great maneuver? Absolutely, without question, it's a great maneuver. But what Pilates and planks do is they take a machine and picture the body as a tube. This tube can move in any direction in a 360-degree circle, not just forward, not just sideways. It moves in every one of those directions, and every one of those require different contractions of different muscle groups in a very coordinated fashion. To sit in one position with the plank and stimulate the challenge that it does it do something? Yes. But why wouldn't we just go ahead and challenge the full 360 degrees of the body's innate potentiality? That's what the body's designed to do. It's why we somehow think that we're designed to just bend at the waist forward and bend at the side. Then those are the sit-ups and side bends we do for the core. What about the other 200 and 350 degrees that we do? So what we did is we decided to take that potentiality and address the whole potentiality in a plank fashion. So that's kind of what the Alcor 360 is. It's a 360-degree plank, but because many of us suffer from conditions with our shoulders or arms or upper and lower extremities, I've taken those out of it. It's just a core challenge. It doesn't matter if you're an amputee or your right arm sore or anything. That's irrelevant. All you have to do is be able to sit. And that's about 99% of the population. Most of us can sit. And I've been able to say to most of our people that have an interest, if you can get in a car and get to a facility that has an all-core, I can improve your core. And that's kind of where we start. And so what I did, Bob, is I said, like I mentioned before, the body's a survival machine. So if I wanted to challenge the core of the body, what's the survival value of the core? I mean, why do we have a core in the first place? What's that all about? Well, in a survival world, there's no survival value to being able to do 200 sit-ups and on the ground and bend in half 200 times. We're not going to be called upon to do that, and that's not going to help us survive. So what is the abdominal muscles really designed for? If you think about it, it's designed to stop the body from bending too far backward and the spine breaking. It's designed to prohibit trauma. And how does it do that? It does that by an isometric contraction. It doesn't bend and twist and do all those things. It has to be stiff and strong and be able to take an impact from any direction. So all the muscles of the core are really designed to maintain this perfect posture in an isometric fashion. Yes, we can bend over and pick things up. And yes, all those things are important. But from a survival standpoint, what really matters is if we get hit from the side in a car, we don't bend too far the other way and break something. So that's what we're trying to stimulate with the all-core. And here's the other thing. When I go do a sit-up, in my mind, I have to want to do a sit-up. And maybe I want to do 10 sit-ups, but I figure I'm going to stop at 8. Well, that's because we're relying on our mind, that conscious mind. And the All-Core 360, you don't have an option. All your job is to sit. You don't need to know how to flex your right intercostal muscle or your left trapezius muscle. Your body knows how to do those things. And so we take the weak volitional mind out of it and jump right into this is a survival thing. The body's going to do this on a reactionary basis. It doesn't matter what you want to do or not. It's going to do it whether you like it or not. And that stimulation, that survival stimulation really kicks the body into overdrive. And so not that planks don't help, but if you did planks on the side of an airplane, you'd be just a little more of aware of not falling off that airplane at 70,000 feet. So it's the awareness of what's going on that makes our planks just a little different. It's that neurocircuitry that says, oh my gosh, I'm paying attention. And that helps rewire it. And that's what we do. We're stimulating the survival response of the core. Human bodies are cores with arms and legs plugged in, and we can live without the arms and legs. We can't live without the core. That's what we have to keep in shape.
That's really, really an interesting thought process, because I do a lot of planks.
It's a great exercise.
It's a great exercise, but boy, it's hard. And, holding that for a minute, 2 minutes or whatever, it really pulls every which way. But you're right. It affects my shoulders when I'm doing it as much as it ever does my core. And if you've already lifted weights for the day and planks are the last thing you're working on, your shoulder's already worn out. So
that's exactly right.
Situation.
But a lot of times it's just one shoulder that's sore because you got arthritis, and now you've got an imbalanced plank you're trying to do, and it's not as good as what we've been able to do.
Wow, that's a unique invention. So I understand that you now have these around the country. Where are they normally located, and how would people find out how to locate one of these all-core devices so they could actually utilize it, especially if they've got issues going on within their spinal area or their core that they need to strengthen? Because obviously our core needs to be the most strong part of our body for everything. I don't care what we talk about. Where can they go to find out this?
Well, that's a good point, because the core is so important to so many things that it's been implemented in so many facilities. We started in that neurodegenerative and neurotraumatic space. So we're in some spinal cord injury centers. We're right here in Atlanta in the Shepherd Center, which is world renowned. Our research is out of the Kessler Foundation in New Jersey. These are world renowned spinal cord injury centers. So we're fortunate to be with them. But we're also in a lot of chiropractors' offices because they concentrate on those back injuries, and it's wonderful for the back injury world. What we found kind of interesting, and I'll just share this with you, when we first started in that neural space, we had a lot of our paraplegic patients all of a sudden start sporting six packs and dropping 10 pounds. And all of a sudden the staff wanted their six pack and they wanted to drop 10 pounds. And so very shortly, this therapeutic device kind of leaped into the performance optimization space. And now we're at University of Georgia. We've been in Auburn and Clemson, the football teams. We're the Oklahoma State University, Arizona State University, a lot of chiropractors that treat a lot of professional athletes. We're in some professional athletes' homes. You know, it's since it does optimize the core, and obviously, like you said, if you're whatever you do, you need your core. So if you're an athlete that relies heavily on your body as your career, it's been great for prevention of injury and that optimization of the core. Like we said, we are cores.
You know, it would seem that universities, specifically athletic departments, would want to implement these into their programs because they want to keep their athletes healthy, not only internally, so that, you know, they feed them the right nutrients and stuff like that, but they want to keep their bodies safe so that they aren't injured. And you know, you take football, for example, if they don't have that core really, really finely tuned, the spinal injuries could be devastating. And, you know, we've heard those stories. So
all the time.
yeah, I would
It
love
crushes
to,
me.
I would love to see that this hits our athletic area quite heavily, because that would be such a protective thing. Just the expense, whatever this costs, would be nothing in comparison to just keeping one athlete from having that kind of an injury.
That, you know, and I so appreciate you say that, because if one more athlete ends up with a severed spinal cord from a football injury, I'm just going to probably have a heart attack. Because, you know, here's the thing, and we're talking about children for the most part. I mean, even in the college, these are young people. And so as a parent, when I take my child to that high school and I say, Coach, here's my parent, please make him a good football player, what I'm saying really is, please protect my child. I want him to be an optimized position at whatever he can do, but don't give him back to me broke up. Don't hurt my child. Don't damage my child. And if you have a device that can stop that and you're not using it, shame on you. I mean, that's just shame on you. Like you said, there's not enough money it don't matter what it costs, and it's not that expensive. But you're right. How would you not do that? How would you not do that? And you know, we're blessed to be at UGA football and in these football programs. They've had some injuries, you know, and it's horrible to see these kids go through that. So that's one of and the athletes have been injured, and veterans. I mean, we're not taking care of them properly either.
Yeah, and I agree. And you know, when you get to my
military
age,
space and help them those warriors.
Yeah, when we get to our ages, we need sometimes extra help to keep our bodies up to a better optimal position.
Oh, yeah.
You know, after I had my stroke there for a while, to move on my own was difficult. And I'm curious, if I had had access or known about this device of yours, if I could have been put into that device and it would have helped my stroke damage come back quicker, because it took several years for me to get to where I had my balance back. And of course, you know, I put on weight because I wasn't moving like I used to be. And so that could have been something that could have been hugely beneficial. But that's
now I was going to say, I'm glad you mentioned the balance, because that's most of our research has been done in post-stroke individuals, and that's what we see right away, that they're having difficulties with balance. So one of the things that the all-core does is a little different than anything else, and it could take a long time to really explain, but you know, we have all these proprioceptors and mechanoreceptors in our body. So if we feel a fly land on our hand, we feel that. But if that fly doesn't move, pretty soon we're not going to notice it's there. I mean, if you put a ring on your finger, you know it's on your finger for a minute, but pretty soon you don't know it's there. So those receptors that tell the body what's going on in most exercises are turned off because it's that same repetitive, I know how to do a push-up, I know how to do a sit-up. So there's the awareness factor. You could fall asleep doing a push-up for that matter. But what we do with the all-core is because we're constantly stimulating all those proprioceptors, mechanoreceptors every second differently, they never can turn off. They don't turn off. They don't adapt because they're moving right to the next thing. So I liken that to putting a ring on your finger, but all of a sudden that ring is getting really hot. Oh, then it's getting really cold. Okay, well now it feels really bumpy. What did that ring just became wood? How did that happen? You know, you'd be paying constant attention to it because you were constantly changing the stimulation. We're taking the entire core, all those muscles, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and millions of neural connections, and turning them on for 10 minutes and they can't turn off. They're on survival mode. They're trying to figure out what's going on. That turns the brain into a hyperactive state that increases our neuroplasticity and these things that we're seeing when we start challenging a person's core, which we know the muscles of the core, but then after 6 months, they can sign their name now. You'd wonder what was that process of working on the core that now makes that right arm have better dexterity. It's the hyper awareness survival state that allows, I think, the body to rewire it. And when we rewire it, that's what neuroplasticity is, but it's actually a physiological change in the body. So in fact, your body's kind of evolving due to this stimulus to become a more optimal. And if you can do that in 10 minutes, well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that 10 minutes, 3 times a week and see if you couldn't do, you got 30 minutes this week. I spend more time on a commode for crying out loud. So it's, I mean, we can do this. It works.
That is so interesting. And again, you're talking in terms that, you know, most people would go, I'm not a scientist, I don't understand the body that well. But on a logical standpoint, when you're stimulating more, then your brain is having to interact with that. And so that interaction from the stimulation of your core probably makes the brain just go into overdrive and allows it to start reprogramming. Because I know over time since my stroke that I've been reprogramming by the more activity I can get in. But your device just helps that happen faster. And it's all done naturally, holistically. It's not voodoo or anything like that. It's just the reality. I'm moving the body in so many different directions in 360 that all that stimulation is doing is building that body up to be its best optimal self. That is an amazing invention, buddy. Amazing invention.
You know, I appreciate you saying that. It started with, I really felt like, back to the miracle body. I think we were designed by God to move efficiently and gracefully through space against gravity. That's all. We weren't designed to hit golf balls, and we weren't designed to throw footballs, and we're designed to do all the crazy things that we do. We're designed to move through space elegantly and efficiently and gracefully against gravity, like a dog. I mean, we're at least as good as a dog, right? I mean, these are perfectly functioning machines. So what's the best way to train something that's designed to move efficiently and gracefully through space against gravity? Well, maybe move him efficiently and gracefully through space against gravity with a robotic device. And I can just keep improving and increasing that challenge until most people get to the balance, coordination, and strength that they need just to improve their activities of daily living, along with optimization if you're into that athletic world. So it's been so rewarding, Bob. I can't even begin to tell you. I spend half my day in tears just because I know that this person's doing a little better. And the research just keeps coming in. Scoliosis. I mean, good gracious, if we can help all these children going through these scoliosis considerations early on, we can jump on that early. It's a muscular imbalance. We need to get in there and help these people early on. But anyway, it's a matter of education. I think your podcast here is what it takes. It needs to be aware. People need to know that there's another option.
Yeah.
And this is one of them.
That's really what I'm trying to do with my podcast, is is let people know all these options that are out there that are good, not even good, excellent opportunities to take care of a problem without throwing just a pill into it that masks the injury or masks the pain. Let's find the root cause of it, and let's go right down to that root cause and then and use that. So bravo to you for your
Thanks, Bob.
years. I know this didn't happen overnight, and
No.
the fact that you had a dream and woke up and actually got up and wrote down on paper what this looks like and how it's going to work was the beginning of this beautiful invention that you've put together to help people heal and become stronger and able to do things that they weren't able to do before getting into that machine. That's a tremendous gift that you've given to this world.
Well, I'm rewarded daily. I'm just rewarded daily. I really look forward to getting up tomorrow because I'll hear something good again.
Well, that's you're leaving a positive effect on this world, and that's what I commend you for, Scott. Before we let you go, do you have just a couple of things you would like to leave with our listeners that could help them today, give them something of value that they could get off the podcast and go, I really learned something from that, but that those last two things that Dr. Scott said really had an impact on me.
Well, I would say if most people that are involved in exercise and maybe in therapy, my suggestion would to them is to really look at the body as a survival tool and see if what you're doing is improving the body's chance of survival, because I think that's the best therapeutic approach. So look at that. And if nothing more, if you take nothing else away from this, balance is the key to, I think, everything. I think balance is the key spiritually and mentally and nutritionally and in our sleep and everything else. But a balanced core is something that's essential for longevity and leading a pain-free life. So work on balance. Don't just concentrate on what I call the mirror muscles. I mean, you can look in a mirror and want to work on that muscle, but don't forget about all the other muscles that are involved with your core. Work on your back just as much as your front, and work on your sides, and make sure you're balanced. That'd be a good start. That'd be two good things.
Yeah, I like the last one especially. Balance is the key to everything. Whether we're talking about something that helps, your core that helps balance your body and all that, or as you said, spiritual, financial, et cetera, et cetera. So great advice, Scott. Could you please tell our audience how they could reach you or how they could find out more about this device and maybe where to look so they could go to a place that it's already located, if there's something in Virginia or down in the Georgia area or South Carolina. Tell us a little bit about how to take care of that, and then we'll let you go on about your day helping more people.
Oh, thanks, Bob. Well, if I was wanting to find more information, certainly go to the website. It's www.allcore360, ALLCORE360.com. And there's a lot of information on there in reference to the patient testimonials. You'll be able to see if people have similar issues that we've been able to assist. But also there's a place on there for our locations. So we've got close to 100 locations around the United States. We've got some overseas. But if you don't have one, and by all means, if you can get to one of the locations, please do, because it's in 10 minutes. It's one of those things that sometimes you go do exercises and you sit around and have to wait for 6 weeks to see if it helps. No, you'll walk off in 10 minutes and you'll have the, oh my gosh moment and say, no, I know this is going to help me. So you don't have to invest a lot of time in trying to understand it. Just get to one and get a 10-minute experience, and that will be enough to move you on. And for those people that don't have one close by, reach out to your local therapist or a local chiropractor and just ask them why they don't have one and why. I mean, it's an advancement, and I know it's a matter of education. So you can purchase one for your home, but it'd be better if the local chiropractor had one so everybody could use it. So that's how I would suggest getting hold of us.
Okay, that's great information, and we'll definitely make sure that it's on the the notes at the end of my podcast so people can find this information as well. Well, Dr. Scott, I have enjoyed meeting you, finding out a little bit about your story in life, and then also this wonderful invention called the All-Core 360, a real true paradigm shift in the way we look at taking care of our bodies in a more holistic way. Thank you guys for tuning in today to the Bob Priest Show of Life. You can reach out to me to find out more about me through my website, bobpriest.life, BOBPRIEST.LIFE. Thanks for tuning in today. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week with another opportunity. Goodbye.